Ribbit dibbit Dubois ding, ribbit dibbit 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 Dubois ding, ribbit dibbit Dubois ding, ribbit dibbit 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 Dubois ding. Mic check, mic check. Just wanna make sure you guys can hear me in the chat.
Labyrinth, come in. Labyrinth.
I predict an earthquake up in here, 'cause we drop bombs on it, smash something, mosh for me, hey, yeah.
Labyrinth, come in.
All right. What's happening, people? Yes, Rastafari. Man, coming like Chris Eubank Sr. Yes, Rastafari. All right, we got Chili Beef in the chat. We got Wave. We got Rich Franklin. Not many people here right now. But for those of you who are curious, if you're into rap music, hip hop music, and you want to hear how I used to sound back in the days when I was rapping, and there will be some new music. I can't give you a timeline on it, but I got a few things cooking in the pot. And anyway, if you want to hear what my old music sound like when I was in my teens and early 20s, when I was rapping and recording regularly and doing mixtapes and stuff like that, then head on over to Rumble to a channel called The Bottomless Drink. All right. And there's been one of my old tracks uploaded to that channel. Mixtape track from 2006. In fact, let me try to get a link now and put it in the description. Just bear with me a moment. Okay, I've added it to the description. I can even put the link in the chat for those who are interested. It's right there. Maybe I can add it to the comments too. Where we at? Try to add it to the comments so everyone can see it. Just bear with me a second, people. Okay, can't yet add comments on this thing here. All right, I'll do it afterwards. Anyway, yes. Let's talk some boxing. We can get back to my old music days, my old rapping days later on if you guys want to. Or if not, then we won't. But let's talk about some stuff that's going on right now. All right, first things first. Conor Benn, Eubank Jr. set for April 26, Tottenham Hotspur. We already knew the fight was on. It got announced a few days ago, but now we've got the date and the venue. Is this fight big enough for Tottenham Hotspur Stadium? Because some people don't think it is. Some people think that Eddie Hearn and whoever else is overestimating how big this fight is. Personally, I think right now, maybe I'm wrong. Okay, I'm perfectly open to the possibility I could be wrong. Maybe I've completely misread the room. But as of right now, I suspect that the public aren't overly excited about this fight. Not to the level of filling up Tottenham Hotspur Stadium anyway. But with the right promotion, and bear in mind, some of the promotion, well, actually, no. I was going to say some of the promotion is going to be on Sky, but there's a rumor that Sky are not going to actually show this fight, which would be bizarre. I mean, surely that's what Chris Eubank Jr. signed with Ben Shalom for, so he could get the exposure on Sky, not just because he doesn't particularly like Eddie Hearn or Frank Warren, but also the legacy of the Sky platform in delivering numbers and exposure and so on. So I was going to say that it will be on Sky, but perhaps not. Okay, but if it is on Sky and if Sky do get behind it, then maybe they can build it into something really big, because they've got Sky News and Sky Sports and what have you, which many people watch on a daily basis who are not necessarily hardcore boxing fans and don't follow the daily cut and thrust of the sport. DAZN obviously is growing in subscribers and what have you. There are more people now aware of fights that are on DAZN. But I don't know, I'm undecided on whether this fight can, let's say, come close to selling out Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. It needs the right type of promotion. Let's just put it that way. It definitely needs the right type of push. But what do you guys think in the chat? Can this fill up a Tottenham Hotspur Stadium? Rich Franklin says, you're actually good, Hatman. Hey, I told you so. See, I'm not the kind of person to say that I'm good at something that I'm not good at. I've never been that kind of guy. If I tell you I'm good at something, I can back it up when I say I'm good at something. If I'm rubbish at something, I'll tell you straight up, I'm rubbish. Yeah, I'm not one of these people that thinks they're great at. Have you ever met somebody who thinks they're great at everything? Like really narcissistic individuals who think that everything they do is amazing. In fact, in this day and age, it's usually females. Have you noticed that? Like in the West, you'll meet many females who think they're literally amazing at everything, which is just delusion of the highest order. Okay? But I've met certain guys as well who think they're just great at everything. Usually when you're kids, but sometimes even in the 20s, there are certain guys who think they're amazing at everything. Well, I'm not like that, okay? When I'm good at something, I know I'm good at it, and I'll tell you I'm good at it. When I'm rubbish, I'll tell you I'm rubbish. You know, like for example, my singing. My singing is bang average, probably at best, all right? But because like most people, I've got a very limited vocal range. So if I pick a song that's within my limited vocal range, I can sound okay. But any song that deviates outside of my limited vocal range, and I sound terrible. Yeah, so I'm not a singer. But in terms of rapping, yeah, I'm good. Yeah. Always been a good rapper. Star Fox says, Hatman versus Okoli rap battle. That's a mismatch. Some people have got really difficult names to pronounce, so shout out to, is it Nye Gape? Pause. He says, have you seen the proposed undercard Anthony Yard versus Lyndon Arthur? Yard's career going backwards. We're going to come on to that, so shout out to you. Crip Talk says, I think it will, Hatman. Personally, I'm looking forward to it. Thought Benn versus Lewis Crocker would have been a great scrap. Someone says, did I missed the singing. Yes, you did, but I might do more singing throughout. Might get back on the singing. If you've got any songs you want to request, I'll have a go. Chili Beef says, what about them bozos that always have a better story than you? Yeah. Similar personality type. Like you just tell a story casually. You're not trying to boast or anything like that. And they feel like they have to outdo you. Donuts. This is narcissism, you know? In fact, I knew a girl like that. Yeah, where she wouldn't let you get, she was like this with everybody. She wouldn't let anyone get a word in edgewise. She'd ask you a question, and then before you've even got half a sentence out, she's trying to talk over you. I was like, what a weirdo. What a weirdo. Star Fox says, Hatman, you sold out. You said you were never leaving the ends in that mixtape. Man blew up on YouTube and took the first flight to an exotic climate. Facts. It's the ignorance of youth, innit? 2006, the ignorance of youth. J.A. says, you're sick at the American accent too. I saw your Flomo impression. Yeah, that Floyd is Jesus video. Shout out to Ocean Blue. Big up Reese Cooper. Yes, I'm doing very well. Thank you. Chili Beef says, can't super chat. Yeah, still got to get this one monetized. I need to just be consistent. Do a few more uploads and I should be eligible for monetization pretty soon. But shout out to Chili Beef every time. I am going to go live on my other channel, on my main channel later on today. So hold tight for that. But yeah, Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, April 26, Eubank Jr, Conor Benn. All right, these are the two fighters here, obviously. The undercard. So, Anthony Yarde versus Lyndon Arthur 3. A trilogy that nobody was calling for. Other than maybe Lyndon Arthur, I don't know. In terms of the fans, come on, nobody was calling for that. Liam Smith versus Aaron McKenna. Who? Don't even know who that is. Chris Billum Smith versus Brandon Glanton. That's another who. No idea who that is either. And finally, Vidal Riley versus Chev Clark. Now that fight, I actually don't mind. In fact, I quite like it. I would have liked it more when Chev Clark was still unbeaten, but I was calling for this fight from quite early on in these two guys' careers. Some of you may remember. I was saying I want to see Riley versus Clark. And I've always felt that Riley would have the beating of Chev Clark. And I guess we'll find out now. So, yeah, I'm quite interested in that one. Vidal Riley versus Chev Clark. I think it's a better fight, by the way, than Vidal Riley versus Isaac Chamberlain. Because Chamberlain pulled out. I think he had an injury. He was supposed to fight Vidal Riley. And so they've put this Riley-Clark fight together quite quickly. So, yeah, looking forward to that one. Now, Eddie Hearn in this interview, not sure if you guys have seen it. This was posted up on IFL TV in the past 24 hours. In this interview, Eddie Hearn said that the Eubank Benn undercard is going to be fleshed out a lot more and there's going to be good fights on there. But what Eddie Hearn counts as a good fight is often very different to what we count as a good fight. You know, he'll talk about some absolute bargain basement fights, some run-of-the-mill Essex boy against some guy from Colchester, and he'll say, oh, it's an amazing fight, that one, with some guy, you know, whose first name is Barney against another guy whose first name is Liam or something, you know what I mean? And he'll swear blind it's an amazing fight. I'm like, okay, Eddie. But yeah, check out the interview for yourselves. He says the undercard is going to be fleshed out. He says Turkey Al Sheikh has got big plans for it. Talk is cheap. We'll see. That's what it is at the moment. But one thing I will say, though, is it's a good look for Anthony Yarde because he's getting a look in now with the Saudis, right? This is going to be a Ring Magazine card rather than Riyadh Season, but it seems as though Riyadh Season cards are going to be exclusively in Saudi Arabia. And then when the Saudis do their foreign events in Britain, America, or wherever, it's going to be a Ring Magazine promotion rather than Riyadh Season. So you got two different Saudi brands basically now. So yeah, what do you guys think of that in the chat? Eddie Hearn claiming that the undercard is going to be boosted up and fleshed out a lot more. This is just the skeleton card. Chili Beef says Eddie Bloodbath Hearn. Mm-hmm. Triple R says Ben Eubank Jr. is interesting because I can imagine Ben doing a madness like what Dylan White did in the AJ fight, hitting after the bell or something like that. Mm-hmm. Triple R says shout out to all the British Liams and Callums who turn up to give it a go. Yep, that's another one. Callum, innit? Callum, Liam. Barney is a kind of name from down south somewhere. You know, like the London area, Essex. There's a load of Barneys down there. And up north, there's more Callums and Liams. Chili Beef says, you hear Cobra was asked to fight Darren Till on a Misfits card. I think Carl would smoke him. He should. I know he's been out the ring a long time, and what we saw with Mike Tyson, there will come a point in any great fighter's career where they deteriorate enough for even a YouTuber to beat him. Obviously, Darren Till isn't a YouTuber. He is a former UFC guy, and judging by his performance against, what's that little guy that he just stopped the other weekend? I forget the guy's name. But that guy went the distance with Tommy Fury, obviously. But he did take the fight on short notice, so we don't know what kind of shape he was in. Anthony Taylor, thank you, waved. Yeah, Anthony Taylor. So, yeah, I mean, Froch at 50% of himself should beat someone like a Darren Till. But we don't know where Froch is now. Been out the ring for so long. So let's move on to the next thing here. We've talked about Vidal Riley versus Chev Clark. That's one of the fights, probably the only fight so far in the undercard of Eubank Benn that's been announced so far that I've got the least bit interest in. Vidal Riley 12-0, Chev Clark 10-1. Why does it say that Chev Clark is a southpaw on BoxRec? He's not a southpaw, he's an orthodox fighter. BoxRec needs to sort that out, all right? Little error there, weird. So, yeah, I got Vidal Riley in that one, winning on points, but Chev Clark will push him hard. And if Vidal Riley is lacking in the chin or the heart department, then Chev Clark will expose it. So we shall see. I think it's a sterner test for Vidal Riley, this fight, than the Isaac Chamberlain one would have been. Okay, so next on the agenda here, we got Jaron Boots Ennis taking on Eimantas Stanionis. This is confirmed for Atlantic City on April 12th. That's interesting because they haven't been doing big fights in Atlantic City for years. Years and years and years since they did big fights in Atlantic City. Back in the 90s, they used to do a lot of big shows there. When Donald Trump was involved in the boxing game, he used to put on a, sponsor, or he was in some way involved in putting on big shows in Atlantic City. I think he owned a few casinos or something, the Trump Plaza in Atlantic City. So Atlantic City was like the Vegas of the East Coast. It wasn't as big as Vegas or as popular as Vegas, but it was something like a mini version of Vegas on the East Coast. And a lot of Mike Tyson fights in the 80s were in Atlantic City and in the 90s too. But I think it slowly kind of went out of favor in the 1990s and became less popular, and it was more about Vegas. But yeah, good to see big fights, at least in this case, returning to Atlantic City. Will it be in the Boardwalk Arena, Convention Center, whatever they're calling it these days? So here we have Jaron Ennis Eimantas Stanionis from Lithuania. Ennis 5'10", Stanionis 5'8". 74-inch reach for Ennis, 68-inch reach for Stanionis. Both guys unbeaten. Ennis 33-0. Stanionis 15-0. Now, I think Ennis is absolutely dead at the weight. And I'm saying this based on his last two performances against Chukajan and David Abanesian. I thought Ennis looked poor both times. And therefore, it wouldn't shock me at all if Stanionis actually won this fight. It wouldn't shock me. I think that Jaron Ennis made a big mistake not going ahead with the Virgil Ortiz fight at 154. Big mistake. To me, again, I could be wrong, but I think he's weight drained as hell. Dead at the weight. So, yeah, and he's a massive welterweight, by the way. You know, you look at the size of him, his reach and his frame and everything about him, he's massive. Much bigger than Crawford, much bigger than Mayweather ever was. You know, I want to say bigger than someone like Kell Brook, bigger than Sean Porter. He's very big for the weight. And he's only ever fought at 147. Can you imagine? The guy's in his late 20s now, 27 years of age, and he's never fought below 147. Whereas Virgil Ortiz turned pro, was it a lightweight or 140? I think he turned pro at 140. Yeah, he turned pro at 140, Virgil Ortiz. Then he moved up to 147. Then he moved up to 154. As he grew, you know, and I think he's around the same age as Boots Ennis. So as his body grew, he kept moving up in weight. Whereas for some weird reason, Ennis has chosen to remain at 147, and he turned pro when he was about 19. Like, how on earth are you still making the same weight at 27 that you were making at 19? That just don't seem right to me. Is it his dad? Because Bozy Ennis in the corner for the Chukajan fight, the rematch, shocking. The advice was terrible. And he just seems like an overbearing parent to me, where Jaron seems intimidated by his dad. That's the type of relationship it looks like to me. His dad's actually bigger than him and stands over him like, you know, you still got that psychological hold the way he did when Jaron was just a boy. If you notice, when his dad's looking him in the eye and barking at him, Jaron will look away and look down at the floor and stuff like that. You know? So I don't know whether it's Jaron's choice to stay at 147 or whether it's his dad's choice. Pushy parents. I suspect it's his dad's choice, but I can't be certain. That's me speculating. But what do you guys think about this? Ennis versus Stanionis. I think a fully hydrated Ennis, the Ennis of 18 months ago, 2 years ago, beats Stanionis, and I think beats him comfortably. But the current version, in my opinion, is drained as hell. I wouldn't be surprised if Stanionis beats him. Ocean Blue says, saw Riley claim he was ambidextrous. Well, yeah, Riley, but on BoxRec, they're saying that Clark is a southpaw. Not sure if you're referring to that, but yeah. I don't, have I ever seen Riley box as a southpaw? I don't recall. Cash says a 50-year-old man isn't 50% of his prime. Cash says, did Tank fight there? I guess you're talking about Atlantic City. I'm not sure. Rasim says, finally getting a unification at welterweight post Crawford, indeed. It's good to see. JA says, this fight is a unification, so Ennis won't have to abide by a rehydration clause like he has for his last two fights. Oh, is that right? I didn't know that. Are you sure about that? You sure that he won't have to abide by a rehydration clause? Because if he doesn't, that's a good look for Ennis. Wave says, Ennis wanted to stay at 147. Eddie Hearn wanted him to move up, but he said he is fine at the weight. Well, in the post-fight interview following the Shukajan rematch, Ennis said the opposite. He said maybe it's time to move up. Go back and watch the post-fight interview after he beat Shukajan. He said maybe it's time to move up. But then after that, he did a 180 and all of a sudden says he's fine at the weight. So, I don't know. I agree with Ocean Blue. He says he needs to cut Bozy loose. Shout out to Issa. He says it's a unification. Okay, yeah. Someone else has said that. Afro Jam says Ennis is well respected in Philly's boxing scene. He would need to leave town. What if he lost to Stanionis? Okay, Afro Jam says, yeah, it's only when IBF is the sole belt involved when they have to abide by the rehydration clause. Okay, that's a good look for him then. That's a good look. Cash says, yeah, okay, yeah, everyone's saying the same thing. All right. If that's the case, maybe I'll have a little bit more confidence in Ennis, but still 147, even without a rehydration clause, is a lot more difficult than 154. Afro Jam said he said before the fight he needs to move up. Post-fight, he said the opposite. Are you sure? Oh, you're talking about Bozy. Okay, you're talking about Bozy. Because I seem to remember Jaron saying he needed to move up after the fight. All right, let's move on to the next thing here. Nope. Yeah, Daniel Dubois versus Joseph Parker. Any of you guys see the face-off? I'm sure a lot of people decided to skip it because these aren't exactly life and soul of the party type characters, are they? Daniel Dubois and Joseph Parker. You got Joseph Parker, who's the archetypal nice guy, going up against Daniel Dubois, who's, how can I describe him politely? On the spectrum. So, yeah, I watched it. It's only 7 minutes long, mercifully. 7.5 minutes. Because of the fact they don't have much to say. That's why it's so short. If it was a couple of, motor mouths, then it would have been a much longer face-off. But since neither guy's got much to say for themselves, yeah, 7.5 minutes. In fact, I saw a meme the other day. It was quite funny on Instagram. And it had a bunch of AI-generated characters. Some of them were based on movie characters. And you had boxers' names underneath them. You know, like this is a lookalike of this particular boxer and so on. And for Daniel Dubois, it had the villain out of Super Mario Brothers, the movie. What is it called? King Cooper or something? Yeah. And it looked like Daniel Dubois. I'm not even going to lie. It did actually look like him. Bowser. Is it Bowser? Which one is Cooper? Isn't one of them called Cooper? Bowser. Yeah. Benny says, funny when Dubois asked Parker about what happened to him against Joyce. I know. It's like he'd forgotten that he got beat by Joyce. And he quit against Joyce. At least Parker went out on his shield. Dubois is a trip. Dubois is a trip. A Chili Beef says it wasn't Bowser, it was Cooper. Yeah, I thought so. Mind Smith says they were awkwardly staring for a bit. That felt weird. Foxy Bingo says, unless Ennis is even more drained now than he was against Shukajan, I don't see how Stanionis can do any better, let alone coming off a year's inactivity. That's a fair point. The inactivity for Stanionis. It's a good point you raised there. Ocean Blue said, I watched it for my sins. And what do you make of it? Was there any entertainment to be had? Any insights to be gleaned? Afro Jam is obviously a gamer. He's saying Cooper is Bowser, before he was renamed. Okay. The minor enemies are still called Koopa Troopers in Mario games. I ain't played a Mario game since the early 90s. Not that I can remember anyway. Benny Stack says, I think Andy Lee held a good account of himself. Yeah, there was one point where Parker or Lee... Oh, no. There was one point where Ade Oladipo said that Dubois appears to be overlooking Parker. And you know how Frank Warren is. Anyone who says anything critical about one of his fighters, he jumps up right away and starts trying to attack him. And then Andy Lee said something a bit critical about Dubois. And then Frank Warren almost had to catch himself and remember that, hang on, Lee's kind of on our team because he's obviously part of Team Fury. It's like he wanted to go off, but he caught himself for a second. Like, okay, let me pull back here. Shout out to Ade Banjoko. Cal says, Hatman coming like Doc Brown on the track. Afro Jab says, Dubois dissed Andy Lee about his style of fighting. That was funny. Myers Smith says, does Dubois' confidence come from a lack of intelligence or recent performances? I think a bit of both. You know, people who don't have a particularly complex mind tend to worry less. If you can get them, you know, a few confidence building performances, they're not going to overthink, are they? Dubois is not an overthinker because I don't think there's much going on upstairs. Whereas somebody that thinks a lot more is more likely to worry because they're thinking about the things that could go wrong. Wow. Here's a turn up for the books. Chili Beef is a hardcore gamer, but he actually says the Afro Jam is correct. My mistake. So maybe Afro Jam is the king of the gamers in the chat here. Shout out to Chili Beef. He won't like me saying that. Maybe Afro Jam is the king of the gamers. Shout out to Charles B in the chat every time. Good to have you here. Benny Stack says Bricktop's veins were pulsating in his neck. Yep, anytime that anyone says the slightest thing critical, even if it's fair criticism about one of his fighters, he turns red as a beetroot, like, ah. Man thinks he's the actual Bricktop from Lockstock. Ocean Blue said, I found the exchange with Andy Lee and Bricktop interesting. He had to hold back. Yeah, he definitely had to hold back. All right, let's move on to the next thing here. So this weekend, there's a few fights going on. You guys may or may not be aware. We've got Dalton Smith taking on a guy called Waleed. Is it Weezer? I'm pronouncing it that way because we in French is pronounced O-U-I, right? But presumably that's not even a French name. Maybe it's a Arab name. I'm not sure because his first name I think is an Arab name. The second name, is it Weezer? Aweezer? I don't know how you pronounce it. Let's just call him Weezer for argument's sake. Never seen him before. He's 19-2, 33 years of age, Orthodox from France. He is, I believe, the current European super lightweight champion, 140 pounds, taking on Dalton Smith, who's coming off that good win over Jose Zepeda. Before that, it was Sam Maxwell and a bunch of domestic level fighters prior. Dalton Smith, 16-0, as I say, 27 years of age, from Nottingham. There was a lot of promise early on in his career. I remember when he fought during the, what's it called now? Fight camp, Matchroom Fight Camp during lockdown. And he was kind of one of the stars that emerged out of Fight Camp. You know, his performance, he fought at least once during fight camp, and his performance was really not only good, but entertaining. But since that time, he seems to have lost momentum. He obviously tried to fight Adam Azim, but Azim pulled out of the fight. No fault of Dalton Smith's. But he doesn't seem to have that type of, how can I describe him? Enthusiastic. He doesn't seem to have that enthusiastic following that some other Nottingham fighters have had. Obviously, Carl Froch being one of them. Actually, why am I saying Nottingham? He's not from Nottingham, is he? I'm getting it confused. He's from Sheffield. I'm sure there's somebody in the chat already going crazy. He's from Sheffield, not Nottingham. Excuse me. So there's even more well-known fighters in Sheffield. The likes of Kell Brook, Prince Nassim, not Johnny Nelson. He was never popular during his career, not much anyway. So okay, scratch that. Nottingham. Sheffield fighter. Yeah, Dalton Smith. Yeah, that's right, because early on in his career, they were saying he could be the new Kell Brook. It hasn't lit up like that for him. That following hasn't caught on for some reason. Any of you guys got any theories as to why Dalton Smith doesn't have the enthusiastic following in Sheffield like some other Sheffield fighters thus far in his career? J&D Boxing says, Hatman question, what odds do you give to Curtis Harper to beat Wilder? Thinking of betting a good amount of money on him to KO Wilder since his chin seems to be gone. Curtis Harper has lost a bunch of times by knockout too. So, I don't know, it's a risky one. But if the odds are good enough, it might be worth laying a few quid, right? Chili Beef says, Hatman, we need to find an excuse for you to do that Alex Jones impression. Which one? The one where it's talking about the frogs turning gay? That's the funniest Alex Jones clip, when he's talking about the frogs turning gay. Or the one with in the Piers Morgan interview. That was funny too. Matt says it's because he's not with Ingle. Okay, so you think that you need to be, if you're in Sheffield, I guess presumably because of what? Sheffield politics, or because of the profile you get being with the Ingle gym? Like, flesh it out a bit. Why do you think that not being with the Ingle gym would impact on Dalton Smith's popularity negatively? Chili Beef says company man could put a glass eye to sleep. Facts. Shout out to Outmatch Boxing. He says, good evening, bro. Hope you're all good. Haven't spoken to you, or have you spoken about the Eubank Jr. Benn undercard? It looks like absolute pony. Yeah, spoke about that earlier on the stream. Eddie Hearn claims that they're going to flesh it out a lot more and that Turkey Al Sheikh has got some big plans for it. But we shall see. Talk is cheap, and Eddie Hearn is the kind of guy who will sell mutton dressed as lamb is an understatement. Afro Jam says his Wilder's chin completely gone though. Zhang is a very big puncher. You know, that's a fair point, but every time you get knocked out, it takes something away from your chin. So what is Wilder's chin going to be like now after the Zhang knockout? Do you know what I mean? Chili Beef says the energy with Crawford and Canelo fight feels off. It's being forced. Yeah, it does feel forced. I agree with you. Oh, Chili Beef says no, the one with the British accent. So, yeah, where Alex Jones does that pretty immaculate plum British accent, the posh accent. He's very good at that. Triple R says, even Liam Cameron probably has more hype in Sheffield than Dalton Smith. Yeah, right now, that's a good point. He probably does. Because of the Ben Whitaker fight. That's right. He says, I would say it's mainly because he's simply not boxing anymore. He needs a rival, but they are avoiding him. Triple R says, why would it be to do with Ingle? Ingle's gym is dead now, as Porky's Corner will tell you. I got no idea about that. Afro Jam says, Corrales' chin was not the greatest, but not the worst against Mayweather. Other factors messed him up. Chili Beef says, anyone know if Eubank will be trained by Bomac? Doubt he will ever be allowed or even want to come back to the UK. He claimed, Bomac, after that whole situation was dealt with, that he can return to the UK. That, you know, whether that's true or not, I don't know. Shout out to G-Man in the chat. Ocean Blue says, Smith looks like a dodgy building surveyor to me. All right, so we've also got this weekend Diego Pacheco, Matchroom Super Middleweight, taking on Steven Nelson. Now, speaking of Bomac, Steven Nelson is trained by Bomac. He fights out of that gym in Omaha, Nebraska. I've never seen this guy before, but Eddie Hearn was talking him up, saying that this is a really dangerous fight for Pacheco, as you would expect him to, right? He's not going to talk him down. He's 36 years of age, which is a concern to me. If this guy was any good, how come he hasn't fought anyone at the age of, by the age of 36? Did he turn pro really late? Did he do a stint in prison or something and then come out and, I don't know, but it's a little bit alarming. In the heavyweight division, it's a bit different, yeah? But in the lighter weights, when you hit the age of 36 and you still haven't done anything, chances are you're not very good. Because surely a promoter would have snapped you up by now and be giving you some type of push or putting you in competitive fights against other guys in the same weight class. So, yeah, if you guys know anything about Steven Nelson, I've never seen him personally. He's 20-0. Again, Omaha, Nebraska, 36 years of age. In his picture, he actually looks older than 36 to me, but I'll take his word for it, and I'll take, I'm sure the birth certificate is there. He was born in the United States. And if you look at his last few fights, he fought Marcos Vasquez Rodriguez, Rowdy Legend Montgomery. I mean, what a name is that? What a name that is. Rowdy Legend Montgomery. James Ballard, DeAndre Ware. Okay. So nobody of note. Not like Pacheco has fought amazing competition so far, but we do know Selecki. He's been in there with the likes of Danny Jacobs and Demetrius Andrade, so on and so forth. So he's a measuring stick, and obviously Pacheco dealt with Selecki with ease. Have any of you guys heard of Steve Nelson? Let me get him up on screen here. There he is. Steve Nelson. He doesn't even look like a boxer, does he? Look at his face. Somehow he reminds me a bit of Andre Rozier, the former trainer of Danny Jacobs. If he was younger with hair and a beard, somehow he reminds me of him a little bit in the face. There's something suspect about Rozier. Always felt something a bit, zesty about him. Shout out to Leo O'Brien. He thinks that Canelo Crawford reeks of Brooke Golovkin. G-Man says, Hatman, what do you think of Anthony Yard, Lyndon Arthur 3? Or Tunde taking a leaf out of Tyson Fury's book? What did you mean by Tunde taking a leaf out of Tyson Fury's book? It's, I said earlier on in the stream that this is the trilogy that literally nobody other than maybe Lyndon Arthur was asking for. It's not progress for Anthony Yarde, is it, in terms of opponents? But it is progress as far as getting his foot in the door with the Saudis, because this is a Ring Magazine card. Ring Magazine obviously is owned by Turki Al-Sheikh. So finally, Anthony Yarde has gotten a seat at the table. Maybe not the big table yet. Ring Magazine, I want to say, is the small table, but it's still a Saudi table. If he does well in the Lyndon Arthur trilogy match, then maybe he gets a seat at the big table. Outmatch Boxing says, Rowdy Legend Montgomery sounds like an AI-generated name. It sounds like a name from an old school boxing video game. You know, like Mike Tyson Punch-Out, or that Mike Tyson game on the PS2, or even Knockout Kings. Was it Knockout Kings? Is that the one with Afro Thunder and all that? Yeah, it sounds like the name of one of the contenders that you have to fight on the way up in an old school boxing video game. Outmatch Boxing says, Rosia's voice is defo off. Yeah, it's something a bit zesty. Rich Franklin says he looks like a retired footballer who played centre back. Afro Jam says, yeah, Nelson was involved in a shooting last year. Nelson was involved in a shooting last year? Nelson who? Oh, Steven Nelson. Okay. Forgot his name already. He was involved in a shooting last year and he's fighting already. So I guess he bust case, right? Or was there any case? Was it a justifiable thing where, you know, depending on which state it was in, he had a legal firearm and defended himself? I mean, what happened? Ready to rumble. Okay. Yeah. He's got a name like a contender from Ready to Rumble. Afro Jam says, yeah, over property. Okay. So he's about that action. G-Man says, Yardo Tunde just trying to sell these fights like Lyndon Arthur Trilogy as a big fight. I remember when he fought on his last Warren show, they were trying to say the guy he beat was a step up. Okay, so you're saying that Tunde is trying to sell mutton dressed as lamb? Yeah, that's what Tunde does. Afro Jam says he is a tremendous puncher. Oh, really? Okay, so you've seen him fight. You're saying he's a tremendous puncher. I know that the Bomac Crawford team are very confident. They think Nelson's going to do the business. They say he's at a great camp. We'll see how Pacheco gets on with him. Triple R says Crawford has more chance against Canelo than Brook did against Golovkin. Canelo is near the end of his career and Crawford is special. It's a fair point, I think. All right. Did any of you guys see this fight earlier on today? Naoya Inoue. I always struggle with his first name. Naoya Inoue against Ji-Yoon Kim. How many people in Korea have the surname Kim, do you think? That's where it's like Chin in China, isn't it? There's so many Kims. Park and Kim are such like common names in Korea. Yeah, in a way, taking on Yi-Jun Kim, who was a late replacement. And he came and tried to give it a little bit of a go, but he was way out of his depth. And that was very apparent from the very first minute of the first round. He was way out of his depth. And in a way, just broke him down, was very aggressive. I think he intimidated Kim in there. and then took him out with a big right to the head. I mean, Kim was like showboating and trying to act like he wasn't hurt and calling Inoue on, but to no avail. It only hastened his demise. And Inoue hit him with a big right hand in the fourth. Kim went down by the ropes, and that's all she wrote. So that was the easiest fight for Inoue in quite a few years. I want to say the easiest fight he's had in at least, 3 years or something like that. I don't think a fight of his has ended as early as this in the past 3 years, I want to say. Yeah. So what's next for Inoue? Surely stepping up to featherweight and maybe beyond. I've heard Gervonta Davis wants to fight Inoue, but to me, that's a mismatch. Gervonta Davis, too big, too powerful. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think that's a mismatch. I think Gervonta Davis smokes him. Is that a controversial opinion? Chili Beef says Tough Man contest on a Mega Drive was a classic. I don't think I ever played that. G-Man says Kim was able to punch with Inoue at times. Yeah, Inoue doesn't have the greatest defense in the world. I think we can probably all agree on that. He doesn't have the greatest defense. He does get clipped. Rasim says apparently he's going to have 2 more fights this year, one in the US and one in Saudi. Khalid says Tank always trying to get himself easy fights. Yup. Afro Jam says I respect Kim. He was an orphan with no family. That's that he knows at all, and was never adopted. He had 2 career-ending surgeries. Benny Stack says that Kim lost to a guy that's lost 9 times. Yeah. That's the ominous thing about it, right? Going into the fight. Just 2 fights back, he lost to a journeyman. So it was never going to end well. Chili Beef said it had Butterbean on front of the box. Video game he was just referring to. Yes, and big up Khalid. Dr. Wu says Davis versus Inoue would be like asking Davis to fight Crawford. Something similar, but maybe even worse, because Davis's punching power is ridiculous for his weight. Do you know what I mean? Gervonta Davis's punching power is ridiculous at 135. So fighting a guy who's coming up from, what weight did Inoue start? He's super bantamweight now, but what weight did he start at? Flyweight or something? Yeah. That's going to end badly if that fight goes ahead, I think. And it won't be Inoue getting his hand raised. Rasim says he started at 108 pounds, I think. Shout out to Ocean Blue. Oh, yeah. For those of you who have just joined the chat here, if anyone's interested in rap music, hip hop music, and they're curious to hear what I sounded like back in the days when I used to rap, I always said I was a good rapper. Some people will say, you weren't that good. No, I was a good rapper. If I'm good at something, I tell you I'm good. If I'm rubbish at something, I tell you I'm rubbish. But in terms of rapping, nah. I could rap. Still can rap, but you kind of slow down with age. Anyway, if you're interested, I uploaded an old mixtape track from 2006 to this Rumble channel. I actually didn't upload it myself. It was somebody on my behalf, but still, it's their channel, and they're going to be uploading a bunch of stuff there, as I understand it. So, yeah, that's a mixtape track of mine. Belly of the Beast 2006. Check it out. The link is in the description. I also posted it in the live chat, so you can scroll up and find it in there somewhere. So yeah, check out the track, Belly of the Beast 2006, on a Rumble channel called The Bottomless Drink, link in the description. Afro Jam says Inoue skipped over a few weight classes when he was younger. Okay, he started at minimum weight. Wow. Wow. Triple R says Adam is apparently a legitimate name in the Islamic world. Would not just a Western name, but I think they spell it Adam, or with two A's. First time I met an Asian kid called Adam, I thought one parent must be English. No. Yeah, I know, I definitely know that one. In the Islamic world, Adam is, they pronounce it Adam, but yeah, Adam is a common name in the Islamic world, which, you know, is why a lot of these Pakistani fighters call themselves Adam. I'm not sure if they're even that's actually their real name, but they'll use that as a substitute for their real name, you know, to make it more Western friendly. Well, realistically, even Western names, right, are actually Middle Eastern names. Any names that come out of the Bible are Middle Eastern names. People don't think of it like that, but they're all Middle Eastern names. They're just like westernized versions of Middle Eastern names, aren't they? Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, Paul. These are all westernized versions of Middle Eastern names. Which begs the question, what were people called? What kind of names did people have before Christianity in the West? Afro Gem says there are still loads of non-Abrahamic names. Yeah, you're probably right. But it's just that people tend to think of biblical names as Western, right? And they're actually not in their origin. But I guess, yeah, you're right. You know, you think of certain names, like female names, Faye, Megan, and I think these names are not biblical names, are they? Brandon Herrera says, how big of an impact can heavy weightlifting be in boxing? I'm old school, so I've never really been a fan of it. But different strokes for different folks, whatever works for you. I suspect that doing weights on the legs would have less of a negative impact and maybe more benefit than doing heavy weights on the upper body. But as you see with Alexander Usyk, when he was fighting at cruiserweight, he was probably rehydrating to like, I don't know, 212, 215. And with age, you're going to put more weight on anyway. Just naturally, your muscles get more dense and you retain more water in your body. So, you know, he hasn't gone up to heavyweight and packed on loads of muscle and, you know, got himself up to 230 pounds. Because I remember when he first moved up to heavyweight, that's what some fans, casuals, were saying. Oh, he needs to be at least 235 to compete with these big guys. No, he's taken away his advantages if he pumped himself up to 235. His body is not designed to carry that much weight. Puts too much strain on the cardiovascular system. Yeah, you can put muscle on a guy who's naturally 220 pounds and get him up to 235. You can do it, but it doesn't mean it's a good idea. So generally, I'm not a fan of fighters doing loads of heavy weightlifting and stuff like that, especially for the upper body. Afro Jam says, met Nigerians calling themselves Friday, Innocent, and Sunday as their Christian name. Nigerians are wild with some of the names that they have. I've spoken about this in a few live streams. Nigerians, calling that poor boy Delicious. His Nigerian dad, the British kid that was in the Olympics recently. Nigerian dad, I think English mum. The Nigerian dad inflicted the first name Delicious upon him. Why would you do that? Naz says, hello, Hatman. Been a subscriber to the channel for a long time. I enjoy the content. Thanks. Nothing but peace and prosperity your way. And right back at you, sir. Big respect to Naz. Shout out to you, sir. Outmatch Boxing says, strength training and bodybuilding aren't necessarily the same thing. Well, bodybuilding is about getting big and lean, isn't it? Whereas strength training is about increasing strength. And depending on how much extra strength you want, you're going to pack on muscle. You might go for lean muscle, but not necessarily. I mean, for example, strong men train for strength, obviously, and many of them are not lean at all. But just generally, I don't like the idea of fighters packing on, pounds and pounds and pounds of muscle. Like I say, I'm old school. So to me, you're going to get more negatives from it than positives. Reese Cooper says it must have been why he started boxing. Yeah. Imagine how much he got bullied growing up being called Delicious. His dad gave him a name like a male stripper. You're going to name a boy Delicious. It's terrible. It's like pedo bait, Imagine a little boy running around, he's called Delicious. That's an inappropriate joke. Khalid said, with a name like that, you have to learn to fight, indeed. Chili Beef says, having muscle type power can help in street fights, but it's no good for boxing. J&D Boxing says, Hatman, thoughts on Abdullah Mason? Seems to be a good prospect. Not too many people are high or even talk about him, especially since his last fight. He was dropped twice. I never actually saw his last fight, but I have spoken about him a couple of months ago on my main channel, I think. And I'm going to reserve judgment until I see his most recent fight where he was dropped twice. So thank you for informing me about that. Chili Beef says, all my biggest lifts were done when I was biggest, but it wasn't all quality muscle, lots of water and fat on my body. Outmatch Boxing says, it's actually quite easy to program for strength without major gains in muscle mass. Well, presumably then, I know a lot of weightlifting is about technique, right? But presumably you can also strengthen your ligaments and joints, because you look at a chimpanzee, for example. Chimpanzees are much stronger than human beings. And presumably it's because their ligaments and all that type of stuff, chimpanzees don't have big bulky muscles. An adult chimp is physically smaller than, your average weightlifter, but they're much stronger. So presumably they've got much tougher ligaments and tendons and all that type of stuff. So if there's a way to strengthen those things, now I've seen how muscular chimps are, but they're not like, if you take, for example, a 180 pound adult chimp, yeah, and put that 180 pound adult chimp next to a 250 pound bodybuilder, the bodybuilder is much bigger. Physically bigger, the muscles are more bulky, but the chimp is stronger. So relative to the size of the muscle in a chimp, they're much stronger than human beings. Like if a 180-pound adult chimp attacked a 250-pound bodybuilder, the bodybuilder would be taken out in seconds. The strength of a chimp is way, I mean, pound for pound, chimps are much stronger than human beings. Much stronger. And again, like I was saying earlier, presumably that's because they have tougher and stronger ligaments and tendons. It's not just about the muscle, because their muscles are not as big as human muscles can get. Humans can get far more muscular than chimps. Outmatch Boxing says, yeah, all tissues get much stronger, but it's not just through increases in mass. Strength increases can come from stronger neural inputs, coordination improvements, fiber arrangements, etc. Outmatch breaking it down. He's a professional. Khalid says, Hatman, do you think Daniel Dubois is naturally muscular, or does he do weightlifting? It looks natural as opposed to AJ, who clearly bodybuilds to an extent. Yeah, I think with Dubois, it's more natural than AJ. He might do some weightlifting. I'm sure he does. But yeah, I tend to agree with you that his size is more natural as opposed to AJ. Yeah, I would agree with that. John Joe says, dipping out Hatman. That track got me on a music vibe. Did you do the beat too? No, I didn't make the beat. It's a mixtape track, so it was a Mobb Deep beat that I rapped over there. But shout out to John Joe. Big up, big up. Jimbo Jones says, what is Dubois doing in Brazil though? Not sure about natural. I guess you're talking about making inferences about PEDs. I just thought he had some Brazilian chick out there. And because he's a bit of a simpleton, he doesn't realize that you don't need to go all the way to Brazil every time. There are places much closer than that. Easier to get to, but, at this stage of his life, if he was a normal young man, he'd be a gallus. He'd have girls all over the place. But I don't know, maybe he's just got this one Brazilian girl who's blown his mind, taken his virginity, and yeah, his mind is all spaced out now from it. Afro Jam says Brazil is famous for PED usage. I don't doubt it. Brandon Herrera says, have you noticed that AJ isn't as muscular as he used to be? I wonder if the confidence he used to have came from being more muscular. Some people are like that mentally. Isn't he? To me, he looks just as muscular as he used to be. He's just as heavy as he always was. Or maybe you're saying he's not quite as chiseled as he used to be. Because in terms of weight, he's the same. He's like 250, isn't he? Ocean Blue says, imagine losing your V to a single mother. Losing your V to a single mother ain't the issue. It's then, after losing your V to that single mother, taking her as the wifey. That's, what's the term they use now? No, that's nasty work. Dominic K says simping to be a stepdad. Khalid says, nothing wrong with piping down single mothers and moving on. Just don't be a stepdaddy. Issa says, honestly, I think AJ does his best work when he's around 230 to 240. He seems to be a bit too slow and gas out a bit too much at 250 without it really improving his power or chin. But you know, the older you get, the more difficult it is to keep those kind of weights, especially a guy the size of AJ, you know, 6'6". It's going to be difficult at his age, 35. And it's not about fat, you know, your muscles become more dense and bones, presumably, by a certain age. Obviously, after that, I mean, it depends on where you're from in the world, to be fair, because certain ethnicities have less dense bones and are more prone to bone diseases and so on. But AJ being from Nigeria, I would imagine, you know, bone density and muscle density and all that kind of stuff will be higher now than it was, I don't know, 10 years ago. So it's difficult to keep yourself down at like 230, 240 at this stage of his career, I would imagine. Reese Cooper says the kid will be pushing Daniel on a swing at the park. Okay, Tef Vision says, Hatman, what do you think of Mitch Green as a fighter? And did you watch his interview on Vlad? Well, I saw one clip of his interview on Vlad, which had subtitles, and it needed them because he's so punch drunk and his brain is so addled from years of angel dust, crack cocaine, and God knows what else he was on, that, yeah, he actually needed subtitles. So I couldn't sit through a whole interview of that. What did I think of him as a fighter? He was a very tough guy. Not much of a puncher, but he had a great chin. I mean, if you see the Mike Tyson fight, Tyson hit him with everything, including the kitchen sink, and couldn't put a dent in him. So in his day, Mitch Green had a very good chin. Chili Beef says, I've clipped many single mums and they attach very quickly. They don't feel they can move on like a young woman, like a young child-free woman can. Jimbo Jones says, how would you rate Dubois' chin? I think his chin is pretty good. I think he has a vulnerable area on the temple. I think his temple is where he's more vulnerable than the chin. On the chin, he takes shots very well. But whenever people have clipped him, either high, it's either the temple or just above, kind of high on the head. Whenever he's been clipped there, his legs tend to go. So that's where people need to be aiming. Because it wasn't just the Kevin Lorena fight. People blame that on the knee. I think he was hurt too. It was also the fight he had against that Ghanaian guy with a bleached blonde beard. What was his name again? Forget the guy's name. Latte. Thank you, Jimbo Jones. Yeah, Latte. Latte wobbled Dubois in that fight. And I don't think Latte even realized it. They had many big exchanges and Dubois took the shots well in the exchanges, but there was one round, it might have been round 2 or 3, where Latte hits Dubois, again, just above the temple, kind of high on the side of the head, and Dubois' legs go, or his back leg buckles. But he keeps a good poker face because Latte doesn't notice that Dubois' back leg buckled, and then Dubois starts immediately backpedaling, but with a poker face. So Latte never cottoned onto it. So I think that's where he's vulnerable, Dubois. Higher up on the head. All right, peeps, I'm going to wrap this one up right here. Shout out to everybody who joined me for this live stream. Khalid says, did you see the Parker Dubois face-off? Yes, I did. Spoke about it earlier on in the stream. So if you rewind it, you'll hear me talk about it then. But shout out to you. Shout out to everybody. And I will be going live on the main channel later. So look out for that. Take care of yourselves until then. I'll see you on the other side. Peace.